Hey, be it listener. Well, we had to have this woman on this particular month, and we moved mountains to get MST and EST and PST time zones to collide in order for us to get you this guest. And so, first of all, thank you for listening to the Be It Pod. Without your listens, without your reviews, without your comments and shares, we can't bring amazing guests like this. So, because of you, we are, and I'm so grateful. I heard Melissa Doman on another podcast, and I was like, holy freaking moly. Yes, I have to have you hear her words, because one of the biggest things I see from people being it till they see it is not listening to your mental health and well-being needs, like not actually listening to them. And if you don't listen to them, then you can't be your full self. And if you can't be your full self, how on earth are you going to be it till you see it? So Melissa Doman is incredible. She has a book we have in the show notes, and she's going to give an honest conversation, like truly honest conversation around mental health, well-being. What is well-being shaming? Why we have to stop doing it in the workplace, but also these are all tools you can use in your life. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I would love for us all to be more on board with her thinking about our mental health throughout the year. But wanted to get her in here on this month while we're all thinking about it. So let us know what your favorite takeaways are as you listen to Melissa Doman.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started.
All right, Be It listeners, I'm freaking stoked for today's guest. I have Melissa Doman here today. And I heard this woman's amazing words about mental health, well-being in the workplace. And I was like, we have to talk about this. She is an expert. And because it's May, when you're listening to this, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So of course we have to talk about that. But also I know how much our mental health affects us being it till we see it. So I wanted to bring an expert in here to talk about that. Mel, will you tell everyone who you are and what you rock at?
Oh, I've so been looking forward to this conversation. So I am Melissa Doman. I am an organizational psychologist, former clinical mental health therapist, and author of Yes, You Can Talk About Mental Health at Work. Here's why and how to do it really well. So what I do at my core is I help organizations, leaders, and individuals learn how to constructively talk about mental health at work. It's not sunshine and rainbows. It's not dark, deep depths. It's somewhere in between, because that is the human condition. And this is not just a well-being thing. It's not just a DEIB thing or accessibility thing. This is a crucial conversational literacy development thing, period. Every person needs some modicum of ability to have these discussions in the world of work going forward, not negotiable. And so I tend to be the spoonful of honesty helps the education go down.
I love that. I mean, first of all, I love your drive towards this and your passion towards it, because
oh, thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously for a good reason, but also I do think people do the dance, or they have someone come in, or they hire someone in HR and they're like, okay, here's this, but we've come a long way with the mental health in the workplace, and people even talking about mental health with their friends and family. And we also have so much more to go.
Yeah. And the thing is, we're trending in the right direction. A bunch of people who came before me laid the groundwork for this to even be possible. And so, I tend to joke that I went from the back end job of being the clinical therapist to the front end job of being the organizational psychologist who's trying to help people share their toys better in the workplace. Because make no mistake, the workplace is just, a playground, but we're all older and have different toys, and there isn't a jungle gym. It just happens to be who gets to CEO. So It's a lot of folks are trying to do what they can when they can with what they have, but it has to be done differently. And so I do all of my talks with companies or trainings or any of that very much steeped in reality. Because if you're not setting people up for the challenges of these sorts of conversations, or what to do if it goes wrong, or changing the language you use, the mindset you use, you're just setting them up for failure.
Right.
So it has to be led with purpose and intention, as opposed to, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. And most people are like, where do I put my hands? I don't know what to do.
Right. They're like, I don't know where do I start? What's the starting point? And then also like,
exactly.
I'm sure a lot of people are afraid to get it wrong because
Yes.
we're going to get it wrong. I was just re-listening to Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. And she says, you're going to screw up 3,571 times trying to be empathetic.
Yes. I have shit the bed more times than I can count, but I had to do that to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
And so it's a slow burn. It's not like the Matrix where you can plug the skill set into the back of your head overnight, although I'm sure people in biotech are working on that.
Right.
But it's going to take practice, and it's going to take mistakes. And there are literal scripts. I'm not playing, literal scripts in my book. Here's what to say. Here's what not to say. Here's why to say and not say those things.
Yeah.
And it's learning a new language, really.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to definitely talk about workplace. And I also want to talk about, because we have a lot of people who even work for themselves. So they are their own everything. They're having and so what are some things that you see happening as far as like, even, what are you seeing like far as like shaming goes when people are like trying to give themselves well-being, like trying to give themselves balance, and then they kind of like, get in their own way of doing that. And what are some signs that they're on the right track?
So there's a concept that I wrote about in the book called well-being shaming. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I love talking about this is it happens all the time, even now, and people just didn't know what to call it. So for example, we'll say in the before time, that if you didn't want to stay till 8:00 in the office and you tried to leave at 5 to have some sort of semblance of integration of not living at work, and someone might say something like, oh, it must be nice to leave at 5:00, or, oh, it must be nice to go for a run on the lunch hour. I wish I had your easy schedule. You know what that is? Number one, that's people being just total buttheads.
Yeah.
And number two, it's just them holding up the status quo, or they're secretly jealous and they feel envious that you're doing something that they can't, or they're too scared to do, or they really genuinely believe that you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And so that sort of well-being shaming is unconscionably wrong, especially now. And that shit still happens, by the way, despite the fact that there's a pandemic and mental health is in the front and center of most conversations. So the response that I always tell people, to tell folks like that who are discouraging you from engaging in healthy, reasonable practices to manage your emotional well-being, is as simple as this: doing things to manage my mental health is a healthy adult practice. Can you help me understand why you don't agree?
Ooh, I love this.
What are they going to say?
Right.
What are they going to say?
Right.
Right.
And also, like, first, they might be saying it because someone said it to them, and that's the workplace they grew up in.
Paying it forward.
Yeah. And so they're just making sure we all got to stay on this line. This is the line. This is the playground I played in. But also, like, whether you're in a workplace or, family, must be nice that, I definitely get that a lot from some family members. And I know it's not a personal attack. I know it's them, not me.
It's their stuff.
It's their stuff, but it is like, yeah, okay. You don't have the weight of 25 people's payrolls on your brain, on your mind every day. This is what it takes for me to show up every day so that I can be the best version of myself to pay them.
Yeah.
And so I think like that is a great, everyone, it's in the show notes, write that down, copy and paste it. You can put it in text messages. You can, her response is genius, because they're never going to stop unless someone brings it to their attention that what they're doing
1,000%. And notice you're not even being defensive. You're making a statement and asking a question. Mm-hmm. Doing things to manage my mental health is a healthy adult practice. Can you help me understand why you don't agree?
Yeah.
That's it. And so I always tell people, please tell me how far their mouths drop to the floor because what can you say to that?
Yeah. And
So,
it might be exact. I mean, if they are someone who's never had this brought to their attention, that they can even ask for
exactly.
things that support their mental health, it's going to help them see that. And if they are
Exactly.
someone who's been told this many times, they need to hear it more. They need to hear it. 17 to 21 touch points is how much it takes these days.
Oh my
So
gosh. Yeah.
isn't it crazy? Yeah. So, okay. When people listening to this are maybe thinking, okay, Melissa, I love this. I want to actually leave work at this time and I don't want to feel bad about it. How do they have this conversation with a coworker or the gatekeeper that stands in their way? You know, how do they explain this to them?
So the challenging thing is that each workplace and even each team has their own set of kind of written and unwritten rules, so to speak. So this really depends, not even on the company or the division, but the team. So you have to take this information and adapt it realistically based on the situation you're in. There's no one size fits all. And so even now, with the fact that lots of folks are doing hybrid working or they're doing, full-time remote, some organizations are forcing people to go back in the office full time, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. The thing is that it's about understanding that people have different levels of needs. People have different ways of working, different ways that energize how they work. And so it's not enough to say to someone, I have to stop at 5 every day. There has to be, these are the reasons that I want to work this way. And this is how it's going to help me to feel good and to do good work. And so if you're going to share these sorts of things, people are not mind readers. No offense to people who believe in psychics, but I don't want to shit on anyone's beliefs. So people don't know what you need unless you tell them.
Yeah.
Seriously, people don't know the type of help you need unless you tell them. People don't know what you want them to do with the information you share unless you tell them. They will fill in the blanks if you don't. So if you need to say to a colleague, I'm really trying not to be tethered to my email 24/7. I'm going to start putting my working hours in my email signature, and I'm going to try to honor that. And I'm going to ask that other people do as well. People do that now, where they write their working hours in their signature and say, I respond, in these hours. If that doesn't work for you, don't feel pressured to reply. And really just putting that boundary out there. And they're reasonable ones, by the way.
Yeah.
And so if it's to a manager who is like a horse with blinders on, and they wear their stress like a badge of honor, you guys might have different expectations and needs. So it's not about pulling each other to the other side, because when has that ever worked well with the human condition? The answer is never. And so just being clear about what the needs are, what the boundaries are, and being very clear about the why. And also that it's not going to negatively impact, because you do have a responsibility in a job. So just make it so clear that there is no room for confusion, and ask yourself if your requests are reasonable. If your whole team works, let's say, I'm just making up a number, 9 hours a day, and you say you want to work 6 hours a day, that may not be seen as reasonable unless there are ways that you can make that up, or there has to be some sort of logic behind it, not just because you want it.
Yeah. Right.
So
because
be
it may be
pragmatic.
It may be that you may also just need to switch jobs then. If you really only can work 6 hours and the agreed upon work schedule was 9 hours, and that's not you, and that's okay too. It's also goes both ways. You don't want to be shamed for your well-being, but we also have to understand that there's other expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to make it so clear, and I have lost track the number of times I've said this. You leaving a job or even leaving an industry because it doesn't feel right for you anymore is not quitting. You're not giving up, or any other ridiculous synonym that you might be thinking about. That's you making an emotionally intelligent decision and disengaging from something that doesn't work for you anymore.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. That's so key. That's, and if you're listening to this and you're like, Lesley, I don't really go into many workplaces, or I go into a studio and I leave. I feel like you can use all of this around your family with your kids. You can say, hey, I would really love to play with you, I'm going to have to wait until this time. And here's why. No,
I
they're
am
children. So good luck. But like what if you
but
taught
even
them that?
communicating with parents and siblings is like that too, regardless of age. Come on. I have to be so clear with my parents when I'm like, I don't need you to fix this for me. I just need you to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they just ignore it anyway. Well, what about this? It's like,
oh my God. So, okay. So let's tie into like people not listening or, the well-being, like when it comes to, our mental health well-being, first of all, it does require us to have some idea of what it is that our needs are. So
yes.
do you have tools or tips that you maybe have this in your book that you tell people like do these things so that you can figure out what you need at your workplace, or do these things you can figure out what you need in life? Yeah.
There is in fact an entire chapter dedicated to that.
Really cool.
So it's basically an entire chapter just explaining not only how to talk about your own mental health at work, but all the pre-work that you need to do. So there's a lot of self-assessment that needs to go on first before you even do that, because oftentimes people are driven to this point of desperation where they need to talk about it, but because they get to that boiling point, they just word vomit all over other people. And then when people are like, well, I don't know what you want me to do, or they respond the wrong way. And that's not through any fault of their own. A lot of people are conditioned to do that we hold it in until we go pop.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about, and again, this is super practical, step-by-step, very, personalizable, where you got to ask yourself, what are your concerns about talking about this at work? Is this your stuff? Is this an environment that you've witnessed in your organization? If you have concerns, where do those come from? And be very clear about that. If you feel unsafe talking to your manager, is that a you thing because you have bad past experiences with other managers, or is your manager an asshole? There's so many questions you got to ask, where do these feelings come from? And then what do I want to share? Who do I want to share it with? Why do I want to share it? What do I want them to do with that information?
That's a good question.
These are the questions, because a lot of times, like, it feels like what I'm seeing is like 100% of the onus is on the listener. That's some bullshit. People need to also take some responsibility in how they pipe up and ask for help.
Yeah.
And people don't know what you need unless you tell them.
Yeah.
And so it has to be both ways.
I really love that it's a both ways thing, because I do know that like I've been someone who like waits until it's like a boiling point, but then it's like, well, now what do I want them to do with it? And how do we
you're so activated that you don't even know the answer.
You don't know it. And so I think like it does come to a point where like we have to have enough self-awareness on a daily basis to understand like, where am I at today? So that how am I receiving this, and what do I want people to do with it before it becomes a point where you don't even know where to go. Yeah.
Right. Because when you get in that state, I'm just going to nerd out for a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah.
When you get in that state and your body and brain are going into survival mode, your prefrontal cortex that makes us uniquely human, it's our personality, conscience, logic, all those adult words, that basically shuts off. So the other parts of your brain that are more geared towards survival, like the amygdala, like the fight, flight, freeze response and all that stuff, is all jacked up and pumping you full of adrenaline and cortisol. So when you're having those feelings, or even if you're in like a depressive episode or you've been traumatized or whatever it is, your ability to place a logic filter on those things is heavily diminished. So it's better to try and get a sense of what is that I actually need to ask for when you're not in that state, because when you get in that state, it's really damn hard. And that's not your fault. Your brain is like, we can't handle that right now. Shut up. We're trying to just keep you alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally what it is. Like the two parts of the brain are like, fuck you. No, fuck you.
Yeah. So we don't have time for this. You waited too long. You didn't.
Yeah. This is why we can't have nice things. Like, this is what happens.
Oh my God. I just pictured the brain. I feel like a cartoon's there. What I do also think is really important about this, I hope everyone's hearing, is like, you may end up going to work and telling your, I
I might have a plushy brain.
It's just a plushy brain. This is why you have to watch the YouTube channel, everyone. We got a plushy brain. But if we don't do this, so let's say if you do this and you go and tell your boss and your boss is like, whatever, I'm not here for the mental health. We did a meeting and that's all we're doing here. We're just checking a box. Plenty of those people
still exist, by the way. Yeah,
and they do. But if you don't do this, then whether or not you leave that, whatever, or not, you think that boss is actually going to be receptive or not, you're still taking you with you wherever you go. And you're just going to repeat the same. You could have a boss that actually talks about mental health, but if you aren't practicing what that barometer feels like for you, you're going to miss the opportunity to have the good boss who's going to listen. Right.
And the thing is, and I want to be very clear, there are a whole variety of reasons why managers do or don't talk about mental health. We cannot assume. Keep in mind, leaders are fallible creatures like the rest of us. They're humans first, they're the job second. So give them just like a teeny bit of grace.
Yeah.
And so there are a whole host of reasons that they may or may not talk about it. It doesn't make it right, but it could be a bit of they don't know how to start, or they screwed it up in the past, or they're very old school and that's just not something you talk about at work. And so there are lots of reasons for that to occur. So the only thing you really can do is not only to, self-organize those questions I was talking about, but if it's really something they avoid, try to understand why, not in like an accusatory way, but like, I notice you really seem like you don't want to talk about this. I don't want to assume the reason. Can you tell me? And so I distinctly remember, and I will never forget, keep in mind, I used to work in corporate as well. I was also equally tortured by managers that I describe as emotionally constipated. And
I've been with those.
Oh my gosh, putting it mildly. So I will never forget one manager in particular, where it was very clear that this person practiced favorites in the team and was like just not a psychologically safe leader. I didn't make the favorite list. So I was treated as such. And it even got to the point where this manager was trying to kind of sabotage me sometimes in some of the stuff I was doing in the business. And one time I don't hide my emotions. So this person noticed on my face that I didn't look pleased. And they said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Nope." They said, "You want to talk about it?" I said, "Yeah." So after months of being terrified of this person, because make no mistake, they were absolutely a bully. And there were other people that this person bullied. And I sat down and the first thing I said was, and this is true, "You negatively impact my mental health at and outside of work." To which they said, "Well, what's your proof?"
That's an interesting response. That's a really weird response. What's your proof?
Oh, very, very like sociopathic, if you ask me, but I don't want to like clinicalize this. And I just laid it out. And because that person was not willing to give me what I needed, the only other choice was to draw a boundary that I was not willing to accept that behavior anymore.
Yeah.
So you may not be able to give me what I need, but you are sure as fuck not going to abuse me this way anymore.
Yeah.
And so once I had the strength to stand up to this person, the overt abuse stopped. But some managers cannot give you and won't give you what you need because they don't even know how to do it for themselves, or there could be a whole host of other reasons, but you are a chronologically aged adult and need to act as such.
Yeah. First, I think it's like, it took so much courage and like probably a boiling point to get you to do what you did. But I also think, I probably would have been like shaking in my pants trying to do it. I know every time I stood up for myself,
I had nightmares about this person. So.
Yeah. But let's talk about that because I feel like that's being raised as a woman and I don't know that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe even people identify as males have a similar problem, like standing up to a boss. But like, I know every time I had an abusive boss where I felt like, oh, we got to be here. I actually need to work through my breaks. I need to do this because that's what everyone's doing. I remember thinking, I can't say, I don't want to do this. Or I just felt like as a woman, I had the hard time of like standing up for myself. Is it a gender thing or goes across the board?
So that's a very valid question. And the answer is kind of all of the above. So there's so many factors that go into that. So obviously there is the gender piece. And on top of that, there's also culture of origin, family of origin, religion. There are lots of things that influence
Mm,
our belief as to whether we can or should stand up for ourselves. But when we're talking about gender, historically, people who identify as female were taught to be more relational, to not be boundary setting, to be more flexible, to be more accommodating. What that's really code for is just people being allowed to step all over you without being sorry.
yeah.
And on top of that, what I also noticed with lots of like super boss bitches who I have like the biggest respect for is when they do put those boundaries down or they do say their opinions, they follow it with a sorry.
Yeah.
And I just did this a few days ago to a chief level person who was one of my clients. And she kept saying, oh, da, 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 sorry, da, 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 sorry, da, 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 sorry. I said, excuse me, ma'am, you need to stop apologizing. What do you have to apologize for?
Mm,
And she goes, I know it's a problem. And I was like, I'm a recovering people pleaser.
yeah.
I know how to recognize, you got to stop saying sorry. Like
Yeah.
you've nothing to be sorry for. And so, but also there's lots of men who struggle with that too. And sometimes you can have, introversion that can also be a factor, or conflict styles that can also be a factor, depending on how your conflict relationship was with primary caregivers or past relationships. There are lots of things that can shape our self-permission and how we talk about these things. But when we're talking specifically about gender, women still in many, many circles are taught that being clear and assertive and decisive and boundary setting makes you a bitch
Yeah.
or makes you difficult or whatever other ridiculous synonym. And there are some women who mask their aggression as those other things as an excuse. And we can be honest that those people exist. But generally speaking, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So it's really, again, when it comes to that boundary setting and stuff like that, again, tying it back to mental health, especially as a female leader in the business, because they still get shit. It's, if they're like, well, like, can you stop being so emotional or whatever ridiculous thing that someone would say, like, you're a leader now, you need to keep it together. Oh my God, I can't. I have two words, Jacinda Ardern. That's it. I have nothing else to say. Like, she's the best.
Yeah.
And then it becomes talking about and managing my mental health is a healthy adult practice and something good that a leader can and should do regardless of gender.
Well, I feel like that's a really amazing thing we can all think about with mental health. It's like a lot of people, there's a lot of things to think about Mental Health Awareness Month and all and everything. I think it's amazing that people are like, I love that my father talks about it. He's 70 years old. Like he's reading what
Aww.
happened to you. And he, like I
Aww.
know it's really great. He's like, oh, maybe that's what's wrong with me. My mother never held me. And I'm like, I'm just learning about
Aww.
this now. You were never held. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Like,
Aww.
but like, on the other side of this is a whether you're a leader or an employee in a business, the through line I'm hearing is like, you have to actually look into your own mental health first. You actually have to talk about your own well-being. There can be no well-being shaming of yourself, so that when you go
Right.
into a workplace, now you can have an absolute bigger conversation. You can either be the teacher that needs to be in the team, or if you are the leader, you can actually start to talk to your team about, hey, in this team, we work with mental health, and I want to make sure we're mental health well-being. I want to make sure that your work schedule is working for you as best as the company can allow it to work for it. Like there's got to be a compromise, but I feel like it
Right.
has to come from the person first so it can go to the team.
It does. And on top of that, and there's an exercise for this in the book as well. I encourage every single team to have their own why we give a shit about mental health sort of statement in the
Mm,
team, not the company, because every team is different in a company, your own little micro ecosystems. Why do you all actually care about this? What does being flexible and giving each other some damn grace look like in this team? What does it look like when you create a culture of understanding, not shaming around mental health? What does it look like when you are bandwagoning and using things as an excuse that invalidate the story of others, and why we're not going to do that? There has to be a come to Jesus, very honest conversation about what those values are going to look like in practice, because oftentimes people say, well, this is important. And then people go, I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
So you got to sit down and actually work it out together. It doesn't have to hurt.
No, it doesn't have to hurt. And it keeps coming back to, like, you said the questions already, but also like, why? What this looks like, why, like,
Yes.
whether you're having a conversation with a coworker or a family member or yourself, here's what I believe, here's what I need, and this is why I need it. And this, like, here's what we believe as a team. This is what it looks like. And this is why we believe it.
And going even further than that, sometimes your colleague or your manager is not the best person to help you. You have to keep in mind, they're not your therapist. They're not your psychiatrist. They're not your doctor. They ain't your mama. So sometimes there are certain things that your colleagues or your boss can and should help you with and just be decent human beings. And sometimes they're not the best people to help you, and you can't hold them responsible to be. Sometimes it needs to be talking to a therapist, calling the EAP, speaking to HR, talking to your partner. And for example, when I was in clinical practice, if someone came to see me that what they were struggling with was really not in my wheelhouse, it was unethical and ineffective for me to keep treating them. So I connect them to somebody who can help them better than I can.
Right.
So it's about understanding sometimes, the folks in the workplace should be the ones to connect and support, and sometimes not.
Well, and sometimes it's like you figure that out with your therapist, your partner, somebody, and then you
or
go
even
to
your boss. The boss might
then,
be like, I can't be the one to help. You're the people who can.
Yeah. Yeah. And then therefore you can actually work it out, and you can figure out what you need. And then you can say, hey, here's what I need, and here's how it helps the team, or here's how it helps the business, or here's how it's going to help you. What compromise can we make so that my mental health can have some, it's, I do think, like, I would love for every leader out there, including myself, to be, the most amazing at supporting mental health. But you said it already, we're not mind readers. We're also human beings. Oh. There's responsibilities on everybody. So if we go with it, that everyone's doing the best they can, we all know that there are some people who could do better, but if they're doing the best they can and they're still not meeting your needs, you have to say something, because they can't know, and they probably want to help you if they can.
And also, there's not one way that one person can meet all of those needs. I mean, it's just some people can't and won't give you what you need. And so you have to be prepared to take action of how am I going to manage my own mental health? How am I going to manage the circumstance? How am I going to manage my expectations and my needs? Who can meet these for me and who can't? And because anything short of that is just a waste of time. Seriously. And so being ready to take action, because no one is responsible for managing your mental health except for you. The organization and your leader are responsible to have a duty of care and create a psychologically and physiologically safe environment for you to work. But then you need to carry the baton in terms of managing your own mental health, and you can't hold anybody else responsible. If they're terrorizing you or bullying you or not giving you any sort of recognition or any way of meeting your needs, a conversation can happen in terms of how that's impacting you, because people are oftentimes not even aware of how they impact others. Yeah. But once you have that conversation, you're still responsible for how you take action to manage things, whether that's staying at that company with that person or not.
Right. It's like if you say you want X boundary, but then you keep letting people push into that boundary or abuse that boundary, it's like
if they don't care.
Yeah. Like, you still have to stand up for the boundary. Like, hey, remember I said this is, and you agreed, and now you're crossing the line. If you're not going to be able to do that, then it might not be the right place for you, or you might have to figure out another way to uphold that boundary, and like, it's hard. It's not easy to uphold boundaries. That's for sure. But that is very uncomfortable.
Well, people also don't like when you put down boundaries. People like to do what they want when they want.
Yeah. But there's also, like, I do believe too, that some people do want to know how to love, respect, and work with you.
Yes.
And, if they knew that every time they emailed you at 5 o'clock, it was actually upsetting you when they were really just emailing you because they're about to leave. They weren't expecting a response from you. Like, wouldn't that be a great conversation to have? It's like, hey, you email me every day at 5 o'clock and it stresses me out. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll have it boomerang to come at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Like, when do you want the email to come? Yeah.
And the thing is that intention versus impact can be miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
And people are very creative at putting in the reasons why you did or didn't do or say something. So that is why I am just all about crystal clear clarity about intention.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so great. Oh my gosh. We could keep talking, obviously
Forever.
Forever. Cause I love you and I love what you're talking about and it's so honest, like this is not a sugar coated, like, let's talk about mental health. It's like, to have very good mental health well-being, you have to know what you want. You have to state what you want, why you need it. And then you have to be intentional about it. And you have to, and like if we all are doing it for ourselves, it's so much easier to have that and hold that space for others. And so you can inspire other people to do it for themselves if you're doing it for you too.
And the thing is, human beings are naturally social creatures. We naturally lean on each other. We want to have that sense of belonging and safety and security. That is a natural human thing. It also needs to be balanced with taking some individual responsibility. That doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't mean that you're being totally isolationist and not allowed to lean on other people. You need both. And so that's why, while I deeply appreciate all of the advocates and activists who have come before me say, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. But then there's no practical implementation to enable people with the skill set to do so based in the reality that we all exist, not the hashtagable one that's created on social media. So I am I sometimes feel like I'm a cold splash of water to the face and a hot poker up the ass to some people. But it seems to work because they keep wanting me to talk about it. So
yeah. Well, I also think people just appreciate honesty, like clear, kind, and being honest, because it is refreshing, even if it is a poker.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Melissa, where do you, where can people find your book? Where can people talk to you more? Where can they hear more about how to implement this and take care of their mental health and well-being?
So if you want someone to come in to be a sweet, swift kick in the ass to your organization, to have a better understanding of what mental health and mental illness actually are and how to talk about it really well and constructively, don't be a stranger. Reach out to me on my website, melissadoman.com. You can also add me on LinkedIn. My book is available. You can either get to it through my website or it's also available on Amazon. And my Instagram handle is The Wandering Mel. And my Twitter handle is Melissa Doman LLC. Don't hesitate to reach out if I can help your company. And as a reminder, the name of the book is Yes, You Can Talk About Mental Health at Work. Here's why and how to do it really well. I love this. I really am so excited because so many people that listen to this do work somewhere. They don't just work for themselves. They work for somewhere. And I do believe that sometimes the thing that holds us back from the next thing we're going to do is the energy zapping, mental health draining thing that's happening at the workplace. And so if that can be a better source of love and support, then it's easier for you to do the thing that you're here on this planet to do. So before I let you go, we ask everyone, be it action items, bold, executable, targeted, or intrinsic things people can do so they can be it till they see it. So what do you have for us as far as mental health goes, as far as be it steps? So I'm obviously very happy that you folks tuned in to hear me yak at Lesley for an hour. What I would really prefer is you did something to action this education, whatever that looks like. If that means reading the book, if that means trying to learn more about mental illness, if that means sharing about your own mental health with your boss or supporting a colleague that you know has been struggling, please take action immediately. Because it is a damn mess out there. And there is no reason that you cannot take concrete, practical steps to show authentic care to yourself or someone else. And mental health at work is never going away. So it's your choice about when you want to take part in that journey. And please, please take the steps to develop this conversational literacy, whatever resource that is, and do not sit on this education, because education without action is a big fat waste of time.
Yeah. Well, this one woman I listened to, she says, information without integration is constipation. So
that's so much better.
Isn't that great? I love that one. So anyways, well, gosh, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, really for just, educating us in so many ways, and also allowing people to go, yes, that's exactly how I wanted to be at work. And then, I'm sure a lot of people are like nodding their head along with you. Like, this would be amazing. So a lot of people feel seen. Y'all, how are you going to take action? How are you going to take action towards supporting yours or other people's mental health at work, in your life? Do us a favor, screenshot this, tag The Wandering Mel, tag Be It Pod, and let us know your takeaways. And if you're like, Lesley, I don't even share things on my Instagram, it's private, then text this to a friend, a colleague, your boss. Say, hey, this would be really amazing, so that they can hear the amazing tips that you just heard today. And also we can help others be it till you see it.
That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of As the Crows Fly Media.
It's written, produced, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Crowell. Our associate producer is Amanda Fraterelli.
Kevin Perez at Disenyo handles all of our audio editing.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to our designer, Jairo Mandal, for creating all of our visuals, which you can't see because this is a podcast, and our digital producer, Jay Pedroso, for editing all the video each week so you can.
And to Angelina Herrico for transcribing each of our episodes so you can find them on our website. And finally, to Meredith Crowell for keeping us all on point and on time.